In this video, we're going to show you how to install a driver's side front brake caliper and bracket on your Ford 500, located right here behind the front wheel. The process for this is the same as the passenger side. Now if you have a hubcap, go ahead and give that a gentle tug outward, pop that off and set it aside. Using your 19mm socket, loosen and remove the 5 lug nuts. Grab your wheel, pull it off, and set it aside. Using a 17mm socket, loosen and remove the 2 slider pin bolts on the brake caliper. Go ahead and work the brake caliper off. You might be able to use a pry bar on the top side, work this back and forth. And use a support tool or a hook to go ahead and hang the caliper up onto the strut spring itself. You may have noticed when you separated the caliper from the bracket itself, these 2 shims may have popped out. So we're just going to go ahead and set those aside for now. Now at this point here, before we remove the 2 big bolts on the backside holding our brake caliper bracket in place, you want to pay attention to the brake rotor itself. If there's a bolt right here, this is a T40 Torx bit bolt. This goes through the brake rotor to the wheel hub. Now if your vehicle does not have this here, you want to go ahead and simply install a lug nut on the threads of one of the studs here to secure the brake rotor. Reason why you want to do this here is that when we remove the 2 bolts on the back, there is a big steel bracket on the back that's used as a stopper. You're going to also have the brake caliper bracket and the brake rotor all loose at the same time, and you don't want to juggle everything here trying to take it apart. Remove your brake pads. Set those aside. There are 2 bolts here, 15mm, holding our brake caliper bracket to the knuckle. Loosen and remove those. There's a bracket on the back here that this bolt also goes through, holding the knuckle. When you remove these bolts here, both this steel stopper as well as the brake caliper bracket will both be loose, as well as the brake rotor. Remove our lower bolt. Set that aside. I'm going to try and hold both of these brackets in place. One hand I'm holding the caliper bracket, the left hand I'm holding the stopper here while I'm removing the bolt. So there we go. And then go ahead and slide that bracket off. Slide the caliper bracket off. You want to pay attention to the rubber seals right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of grease inside here, not a lot. We also want to add some grease to the slider pins. The reason why we do this here is sometimes from the factory, it doesn't have a lot of grease on here, so we just want to put a thin coat on here just to protect it all. Do the same over here. It doesn't have to be all clumpy, lumpy, just a thin coat. Set the caliper aside, grab your caliper bracket, and apply a thin coat of grease to where the shims are going to be placed. Now, there shouldn't be excess on here, just a thin coat. Install that, and flip it over and repeat for this side here. You want to make sure that those are sitting flush on both sides as well as on the upper slider. And that caliper bracket is ready for installation. Using an 18mm wrench and socket, separate these. Install your caliper bracket. Install your stopper bracket first. I did put some blue Loctite on our bolt as we had from the factory. Slide your bracket in, push the bolt through. Yeah, now that'll tighten. Now we have our brake caliper here. We're going to put a couple of mats here. The reason why we're doing this is that when we undo our brake line here, brake fluid is going to run out. We also have a catch can underneath to catch any residual that comes off of the mat here. I don't want brake fluid to run out all over our brake rotor and the other components that are underneath. We're going to use a 10mm socket to remove this bolt. There is going to be 2 copper washers, one on this side of the bolt, one on the other side of this block. So when we remove this, we want to make sure that we remove both of the copper washers, install the 2 new washers onto our new caliper. Our washer is stuck on the other side, so we'll just need some pair of pliers or a pick to pop that off. Now on the bolt, make sure you get the old washer off. Pull that off. Install the new washer, put it through the block, install the new washer on the other side, install that in, and get that bolt started. Take your caliper, hang that back up, set that aside, remove your mats. Install your brake pads. Line up these little tabs here with the grooves in your slides. Install the shims on the pistons. Install your caliper bolts. On the caliper, you want to go ahead and locate the brake bleeding screw right here. I'm going to pop off the little rubber cap here. Set that aside. I'm going to use a 10mm wrench and want to go ahead and loosen the brake bleeder. Turn that counterclockwise. Loosen up that brake bleeder and just undo it a few threads. What we're doing now is we're waiting for the brake fluid to come down the line, fill up behind the caliper here, and start to drip out of this here. Once we have fluid coming out of this, go ahead and tighten that down, clean it up, and then reinstall our rubber boot. What may help this speed up the process of the fluid coming out is underneath the hood you can open up the brake fluid reservoir cap. Now we have brake fluid dripping out of the port here, out of our bleeder screw. So now go ahead and snug that down. Now you can see we have the brake fluid coming out. Go ahead and snug down that brake bleeding screw. And once you have that snug, I want to go ahead and spray that down with some solvent and clean up any of that residual fluid. Install the cap. When you do this here, just on the side of the reservoir, just make sure that your brake fluid level is at the max line, and ours still is. If you are low, go ahead and add the appropriate amount of fluid to get you back up to the max line. Once you're all set, go ahead and install the little rubber cap. Now, if your vehicle is without ABS brakes, go ahead and pump up the brake pedal, make sure everything feels good. If the brake pedal is soft, go ahead and begin your brake bleeding process. Now, if you have ABS brakes, once you do your brake bleeding process on all of your brakes, you then want to go ahead and hook up the scan tool to the computer in the vehicle, go to the brake section, and then follow the instructions there. Once you've done that with the scan tool, come back out and re-bleed the brake system, and then double check your brake fluid at the end. Torque the 2 bolts for the caliper bracket to the knuckle to 74 foot-pounds. Torque the caliper bolts to the caliper bracket. I'm going to torque those to 44 foot-pounds. Go ahead and line up the wheel with the lug nuts. Install all of the lug nuts by hand first, or at least get them started a few threads. Once these are all started, we'll go ahead and snug them down. Using your torque wrench, go ahead and torque the lug nuts down to 95 foot-pounds. And when installing the hubcap here, you want to go ahead and make sure that the little notch lines up with the valve stem. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.